In late 1974, a struggling British band with no guitarist walked into a recording studio in Van Nuys, California, to look at the equipment. The drummer, a tall, lanky Englishman named Mick Fleetwood, was there for one reason only: to check whether the studio was good enough to record in. He was not looking for a guitarist. He was not auditioning anyone. The engineer, wanting to demonstrate the sound of the room, played him a track by two unknown musicians who had recorded there the previous year. The song was called Frozen Love. Mick Fleetwood heard about 90 seconds of it and asked who was playing the guitar. The guitarist was a 25-year-old named Lindsey Buckingham. He had made one album with his girlfriend, a singer named Stevie Nicks. The album was called Buckingham Nicks. It had been released in 1973. It had sold almost nothing. Their record label had dropped them. Stevie was working as a waitress and cleaning houses to pay their rent. Lindsey was recovering from mononucleosis in a friend's apartment. They were, by every measure the music industry uses, finished. Mick Fleetwood called Lindsey Buckingham and offered him a job. Lindsey said one thing in reply, one sentence that changed the history of popular music. He said, "I have a partner. If you want me, you take Stevie too." Mick Fleetwood had never heard Stevie Nicks sing. He had heard one guitar solo on a demo track in a studio he was thinking of renting. On the strength of that, he agreed to hire two people he did not know to join a band that had lost 3 lead guitarists in 3 years and was, at that moment, going nowhere. 18 months later, that band released an album that would sell 20 million copies. 2 years after that, they released another one that would sell 40 million. This video is the story of how that happened and of what it cost every single person in the room. Because everything Fleetwood Mac gained in those 2 years, they paid for with every relationship they had. Stephanie Lynn Nicks was born in Phoenix, Arizona in 1948. Her grandfather was a country singer who never made it and who taught her to sing duets before she was 5 years old. She met Lindsey Buckingham at a party in California in 1966 when they were both teenagers. He was playing California Dreamin' on a piano. She walked over and sang the harmony. Neither of them said anything to the other for 2 years after that. They found each other again in 1968 and joined a band called Fritz. Fritz opened for Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. Stevie watched Janis from the side of the stage every night and studied exactly how she held an audience. When Fritz broke up in 1971, Lindsey and Stevie moved to Los Angeles together as a couple and as a duo and started trying to get a record deal. They got one, briefly. Polydor released Buckingham Nicks in 1973. It was a good record. It went nowhere. The label dropped them within the year. And this is the period that people forget when they think about Stevie Nicks. The 2 years in Los Angeles where she supported both of them by waiting tables at a Bob's Big Boy restaurant and cleaning the house of their producer for $25 a week, while Lindsey stayed home and practiced guitar for 8 hours a day. She wrote Landslide during that period. She was 27 years old, she was broke, her career had collapsed, and she was sitting in a friend's house in Aspen, Colorado, looking at the mountains and trying to decide whether to give up music entirely and go back to school. The song took her 5 minutes to write. If a song that took 5 minutes to write has ever meant something to you, take a second right now to hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach the people who still care about these stories. 3 months after she wrote Landslide, sitting in that house deciding whether to quit, the phone rang. It was Lindsey. He told her a British drummer had called and that they had both been offered a job in a band called Fleetwood Mac. Stevie's first question was, "Who is Fleetwood Mac?" On the last day of 1974, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks officially joined Fleetwood Mac, the band that had been a British blues group, then a psychedelic folk group, then a struggling California pop rock group. now consisted of 2 Englishmen, 1 Englishwoman, and 2 Americans who had never been in a successful band in their lives. They started recording almost immediately. The album, self-titled, known to everyone as the White Album, was made in about 10 weeks. And the thing that happened in those 10 weeks is the thing that makes this story remarkable. 5 people who barely knew each other discovered that their voices fit together perfectly. Christine McVie's warm alto, Stevie Nicks's distinctive rasp, Lindsey Buckingham's high harmony. 3 lead singers, 3 songwriters in one band. No other group in rock history has ever had that and made it work. Rhiannon was Stevie's. She had read a novel with a character named Rhiannon and written the song in about 10 minutes, not knowing that Rhiannon was a genuine figure from Welsh mythology, a goddess associated with horses and birds. When she performed it live, she performed it as a possession. Audiences did not know what they were watching, neither did the rest of the band. Landslide was Stevie's. Say You Love Me and Over My Head were Christine's. Monday Morning and I'm So Afraid were Lindsey's. The album came out in July 1975 and did nothing for months. Then radio started playing Over My Head, then Rhiannon, then Say You Love Me. The album climbed the charts for over a year and eventually reached number 1, 15 months after its release. It sold more than 5 million copies in the United States alone. Fleetwood Mac, the band that had lost Peter Green, Jeremy Spencer, and Danny Kirwan, the band that had been playing to half-empty clubs 18 months earlier, was suddenly one of the biggest acts in America. And at exactly the moment it worked, every relationship inside the band ended. John and Christine McVie had been married for 8 years. On the road in 1975 and 1976, that marriage collapsed. Christine has described it plainly. They stopped speaking to each other entirely, except about music. They played on the same stage every night, standing 10 feet apart, and did not exchange a personal word for months. John drank. Christine started a relationship with the band's lighting director. The marriage was over, but neither of them could leave, because leaving meant leaving the band. And the band was finally, after 8 years of failure, working. Lindsey and Stevie ended too. They had been together since 1971. They had survived poverty, rejection, and 2 years of her waiting tables to support his practice schedule. What they did not survive was success. The dynamic that had worked when they were nobody, Lindsey as the producer, the arranger, the one who shaped her songs, became unbearable when Stevie's songs were the ones the radio was playing. They broke up during the making of the next album, and then they had to keep working together every day for the next 30 years. Mick Fleetwood's marriage ended in the same period. His wife Jenny left him. The band's manager, the crew, the touring apparatus, everyone around them was watching 5 people fall apart while playing love songs to arenas every night. This is the setup for Rumors, the album we cover in Volume 4, the album made by 5 people who had all just destroyed their relationships with each other and had to write songs about it in the same room. If you want that video the moment it goes up, subscribe now. The next volume is the one this whole series has been building towards. Think about the sequence of accidents that had to happen for any of this to exist. Mick Fleetwood had to lose 3 guitarists in 3 years. He had to walk into one specific studio in Van Nuys to look at equipment. An engineer had to decide to demonstrate the room with one specific track. Lindsey Buckingham had to refuse to join without Stevie Nicks. And Stevie Nicks had to still be there. After 2 years of waiting tables, 3 months after nearly quitting music entirely. Remove any one of those, and there is no Rumors, there is no Dreams, there is no Go Your Own Way. Fleetwood Mac is a footnote in the history of British blues, remembered by collectors as the band Peter Green started and abandoned. Instead, in 18 months, A band that should have died twice became the biggest act in the world, and the price was every marriage and every relationship inside it. They all knew it at the time. Christine McVie said later that they simply decided the music was worth more than their personal lives. And then they proved it by making the album that would outsell almost everything else in the decade. Stevie Nicks was waiting tables in 1974. In 1977, she was on the cover of Rolling Stone. 2.5 years. That is the whole distance. This is the Fleetwood Mac Files, Vol.3. 2 unknowns walked in, and everything changed. Next, Rumors, the greatest album ever made by 5 people who could not stand each other. Subscribe. We do this every day.